How the devil was that? I mean, that was quite unbelievable. I mean, I've never really known. A lot of people here obviously know that you were asked to go and just do the Midnight Night in '73, but I've never really known why. Why did David ask you to do that?
So 50 years ago today, we were rehearsing in the afternoon, and I was just fooling around playing My Papa's and Ziggy and changes, and David, being very spontaneous, says, "Oh, we need an overture. Open the show." Like an hour before we went on, and I almost had a heart attack. After the show, he actually said to me he was more nervous for me than he was for himself, which just shows his true humility.
Yeah, I mean, insane. I mean, also, I'm not sure where his mind would have been that night, because it's such a momentous night for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, there are a lot of things that we could talk about in relation to the past. But what I really want to talk about is what comes out of that night and the momentum that it really creates in culture. And I think the best place to really start that conversation is with Richard's trousers and possibly those boots.
Well, these boots are 1975 and my trousers are 1975. Growing up in the smallest country in the southern hemisphere, Swaziland, it's now called Eswatini, to turn up in this gear and tell my father, and all my friends did the same thing. We all said we were bisexual and we were Bowie fans. What the fuck's going on? You know, this is pre-Rocky Horror, pre the current conversation about gender fluidity. He did it all first.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And Ziggy as a central character in terms of so many freedoms that we now consider to be fundamental. Ziggy was that kind of gravitational force. I think on a more personal level, Suggs, you came back to London from Wales in 1972. So you landed in Ziggyness.
Yeah. So I was living with my aunt in Wales for a few years, and of course I saw that, like we all did, the epochal Starman on top of the pops on a black and white television. I didn't realise what colour that jumpsuit was till about 20 years later. But for sure, yeah. I mean, of course, epochal, life-changing moments seeing him on top of the pops, yeah.
But you also, oddly, and we talked about this earlier, but you also developed not quite a Ziggy-esque persona, but you went from being Graham to Suggs. And there is no doubt Suggs as a persona is someone who does kind of behave differently from maybe Graham.
Well, certainly I created a character, yeah. I was at school, very rough school, and my name was Graham McPherson, which firstly was going to take up far too much spray paint, because graffiti was all we got. My mum had an encyclopedia of jazz musicians, and I see all these names like Fingers, this and that and the other, and I put a pin in the letter E of the word Peter. I thought, well, that's no fucking good, is it? I mean, not putting down the Peters of this world, but his second name was Suggs. Yeah, and I don't know, for some reason, whether it was unconscious or not, I decided I was going to create an ulterior personality.
Does Suggs as a character, I mean, look, you've got a massive UK tour that you're playing in December. Do you have...
Thank you.
That wasn't a gratuitous plug. No money has changed hands.
I was under the soap dish.
So, but the point is this, my point was this, did you have to don the war paint to be Suggs? What do you have to do? Because I think that's a big issue within the reason that David as well felt he couldn't just carry on being Ziggy.
Well, by all accounts, he was very, very shy, wasn't he? Very, very nervous, and he felt that a need to put on some sort of wall paint. I mean, not quite so much, but for sure you have to get in a different mindset when you go on stage. I sort of think of myself a bit like a captain of a football team or something, you know what I mean? You have to go up there and lead the way. But I've become Suggs, so poor old Graham McPherson's been left in the bushes somewhere. I don't know where he is anymore.
We're going to come on to a really difficult topic around mental health in a short while to do with that whole persona and Ziggyness, and I think there's some conversations to be had around that actually, because I think that is enshrined in that character. But before we do that, let's talk a bit more about some of those cultural freedoms that we were talking about. Dom, you were obviously, you bisected a lot of different elements of culture very early on. You had the fashion element, you started making films early on, you were part of that kind of punk kind of vanguard as well that took David's ethos and moved it forward in so many different ways. How did Ziggy affect you, and what was it that you bought into in terms of Ziggyness?
Ziggy helped me get my leg over and lose my virginity.
I knew that was coming.
No, I'm just thinking, because the first time I saw David was on this tour, the last leg, pun intended, of this Ziggy Stardust tour. I saw him at the Gaumont Theatre in Kilburn. I think it was a month before this date. And I'd taken my then girlfriend along to show her that I wasn't like the other guys. Weren't a fucking treat.
Yeah, should we move on? Or maybe we could talk about some of that ongoing influence, because that idea that I mean, there's no doubt that in an odd way, when you think about punk, it takes some of those records and turbocharges them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was on the King's Road from about 72 onwards. In fact, I was mates with his tailor, Freddie Beretti, who was responsible for a lot of the look, if I remember rightly. And Freddie would take me down to this club, the Sombrero, on Sunday night, that David frequent, along with Freddie. And it was there that I met people like Ava Cherry. And, yeah, that's not what you asked me, is it?
No, but it doesn't matter, carry on.
But no, it's interesting, because when, we were down with Bowie from the get-go, from the minute I was listening to Space Oddity in bed on Radio Luxembourg, and we stuck with him. And then when punk started to creep in, and he was starting to get more popular, he didn't feel like he was ours anymore. So a lot of us bailed on it, stupidly. But the thing is, you couldn't ever write the brother off. Because he might have been inconsistent, but that's the sign of true genius. And also, I think it's interesting that in the same way that he invented Ziggy as a sort of slap in the face to that hairy, hippie denim thing, which he'd been involved in a few years before, funny enough. I think what's interesting about him burying Ziggy is he's kick-started this glam thing, he's the daddy of it, but then he sees it becoming a bit bubblegum. And I think he rightly kind of dissociated himself from that and became a soul boy, which is the same thing my lot were doing then, because funny enough, back in the early 70s, the lick was skinheads. And I'm talking about the fashion version, not the fascist version. But by the early 70s it was getting thuggish, and some of us wanted to morph into something else. And a lot of us became soul boys like David.
I mean, the soul aspect is something that you've talked about before. You've talked about the fact that he plays, much as though people say, oh, David absorbed a lot of soul, and Ken and Mike, you'll be first-hand able to discuss this. He had a profound impact on black music too.
Well, black music had a profound impact on him, I guess.
Yes, but also, but it's a two-way street.
I'll tell you what's interesting about David is not only did he cross gender, but he made an impact on the hip of black folk as well. I mean, people like Lee and Jazzy B and Goldie and Daddy G were all hip to his musical moves. And it wasn't just the music, it was the references he was bringing in. David's touching on film, cinema, theatre, art, philosophy. The brother was deep, and that's what gave his music that kind of gravitas.
That sort of brings us on to another part of the whole Ziggy experience, which is pure family. Because what you've described there is the idea that you can buy into someone, not just for the music, it's a multi-layered experience, and that's really important. And Danielle, as someone who spends a lot of time, championing new music and playing new music as well, and discussing new music, who do you see around now that we can kind of live our lives by? Because I think if we have this conversation in old people's terms, for want of a better term, we go, well, there's no one like that anymore. But every generation has said, there's no one like that anymore.
Yeah, but this time they're right.
They're not though, are they? You believe in the future, Don, you don't believe in the past. Unless you have regrets.
Listen, that's a hard act to follow, come on.
Yeah, it's not an act you can follow. But I will continue with the question away from, you know, the descent.
I think there's been a few people that have touched on it, and all of them have mostly said, you know, have been inspired by David Bowie. Lots of people very, very open about it. People like Lady Gaga, who says she wakes up every morning and thinks, what would David Bowie do? And I was chatting with Ken before we came on here and saying, even if people said they weren't inspired by David Bowie, they were inspired by someone else. That person was probably inspired by David Bowie. So I think it does all go back to David Bowie, but he broke down so many boundaries. Things became very hazy between the avant-garde and the mainstream, and now I think, in terms of even when you see playlisting now, the tribalism's kind of gone. It's broken down all those barriers where new artists are dipping into all sorts of territories and fashion and identity and political messages and beliefs, and I think it's become a much more open conversation, and all of that is thanks to David Bowie. Everything.
It's interesting, Ken. I think you should reprise what we were talking about in terms of that influence, even when it's subconscious, because you did say to Danielle and I upstairs when we were chatting about how certain people go, oh, no, I'm not really influenced by David Bowie. And then it's like an onion, it unpeels.
Yeah, it's multi-generational now. It was Mike who was telling the story earlier on today. There was an artist he was going to work with that said that I wasn't influenced by Bowie, so I don't know if it would work or not. Who were you influenced by? And she said Trent Reznor. Now, who do you think? You get it, right? So they were influenced by David, but without realising it. And that's one of the problems today, that people don't look back enough to where everything stems from. One of the things that I hope from tonight is that younger members of the audience that have been brought up on the later Bowie will get to hear and see the earlier Bowie, to see where he came from, and maybe explore a little more about the effects that he had on people, on dress, on music, on art, on the internet. He was so far advanced on the internet, and with Bowie bombs and things like that, he was brilliant. And the ultimate performer. I've said many times, I co-produced 4 albums with David. 95% of those vocals that he did were one take from beginning to end, the first take. No auto-tune, no copy and pasting, no moving around. Just one take is what you've been doing. I've never known anyone quite like it.
No, and also you are quite well placed, as I've said to you before, because you did work with the Beatles, so you did see people who were pretty good.
No, I've worked with the best. I've had a blessed life. I've worked with the most incredible talents, which made my job so easy. I didn't have to try very hard or do very much. They did it all in the studio. It was great. They would play, I put my feet up on the board and just, it's great, the best drug in the world.
When we're talking about Ziggy and that moment, though, there is obviously something that comes into play. That is the moment where fame becomes a thing, and he became properly famous, and you saw that firsthand.
Yeah, but it's like your kids growing up. You see them every day, so you don't see exactly what's happening with them, how they're growing, how they're changing. And it's when the grandparent comes in who hasn't seen them for 4 months. Oh boy, little Jimmy has grown so much. He has? I hadn't noticed it. And it was very much like that for me with David. It was, well, I first started to work with him on the Space Oddity album, so I saw him from over a long period, and I didn't notice the changes as fast as everyone else did.
I mean, it is interesting though, because he described that period as being almost tantamount to schizophrenia. Inhabiting Ziggy as a persona became a problem. And we talked about it very loosely in your dressing room, Richard. Have you ever inhabited, as an actor, a character and taken that character home?
Yeah, I did a film called How to Get Ahead in Advertising, which I played a complete maniac. And my wife said, thank fuck you finished doing that at the end of it. But you know, I think more than anything, Ziggy Stardust has given people to be who they want to be, to shag who they want to shag. And you know, I just think that's an amazingly open-minded thing that happened, you know, decades ago. So, you know, I think we're still benefiting from that.
Oh, 100%. We'll probably move on beyond shagging into the idea.
But never move on from the shag. Please, let's never move on from the shag.
Apparently in 73 there were people shagging in the aisles. Actually, that's pompous. There weren't any aisles. It wasn't seated. Moving on. But I do think there is something that comes out of that night unwittingly, because the idea to retire Ziggy as a persona was personal, but also business orientated. Right? I think we all know that. But what comes on the back of it is the idea of creative rebirth. It's the idea of being able to do anything, as you say. Right? Mike, you have seen when you saw that creative rebirth close up because you carried on working with David. Where was his mind at after Ziggy?
He told me before we went on stage, oh, we're going to be in France in a few weeks doing pinups. And I didn't write any of the songs. I mean, he was egoist that way. And we're doing See Emily Play a few days later. He couldn't help himself. And he was like a spontaneous unfolding of creativity. It was just endless, you know. And every tour that I did with him, the last 5 or 10 shows, it wasn't fun being around him because he was ready in the next project and talking about the record or where we're going. So he would always be done before us. So, but I love that about him, and he didn't believe in a comfort zone.
Well, clearly not, and I think that's also why there are some moments when you realise that there are records that people then return to. And I don't know if there are any Bowie records that you guys have returned to that you initially dismissed. That's what I really mean to say, not records you return to. There are loads you return to, but there are some that get critically massive, and then they hove back into view. People go, I really get that now.
Hunky Dory.
Hunky Dory, for instance. Yeah, not most of it.
It was brilliant, yeah, but it was panned. It didn't sell a thing.
You're right, yeah, it didn't do commercially that well.
It was Ziggy that made it. It was Starman made it.
The thing about David is he was the ultimate camping director. There wasn't a musician that he called that was wrong. They were all right for any point in time. And you had these unsung heroes like Mick Ronson and what he contributed. And for sure, and a gentleman like you can't believe, you know. And there's other unsung heroes. Ken Scott made me sound good on Atlanta 7. He got the right sound, and I'm indebted to you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks to you. You did such a great performance for me.
It's only 12 notes. You either go up or down, in my case, sideways.
You should have seen Ken and Mike earlier with Ken kind of beasting you really over that piano and telling you it wasn't as good as the other one that you played. But you know, it's one of those relationships.
I tried the studio, this piano, the Bechstein that was there, Hey Jude was done on it, and it's just so many great pieces, and Ken was involved in a lot of them. The notes found me. It was the easiest album I ever did. They were all pretty much one takes, I think, of Lady Grinning Soul. And David never sang Lady Grinning Soul live in the 600 shows that I did with him, which is absurd because it's one of his best songs, but that's how he was. He was not attached to things as much as he had all the success in the world. He told me on the tour in 2003, he said, Mike, I could live out of a small suitcase in a small room, and he meant it. And we feel that essence still pervading, because I've played with at least 100 singers on touring in the last 5 years who love David, and everyone has a story how he affected them. And I don't know any other artist in history that reached as many actors, actresses, people in fashion, and of course musicians and songwriters as David. So he's going to be known for that in addition to his great singing and songwriting.
I think there are also those moments that people refer to as like the David Bowie moment when you're an artist. So I think, you know, you are at a certain level and you arrive at that level, and I think you go, we're going to meet David Bowie now. Suggs, hold on, Don and Suggs have both reacted with a slight wince stroke, knowing, well, something went wrong, didn't it? Tell us.
What, for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of things, yeah. That's what I've told them right. But the first time I met him, funny enough, talking about the suitcase being humble, you know, that enigma that he created, he realised was his thing. But actually, as a real person, he was a very humble person. Because I first met him in the Wag Club. A friend of ours used to run in Soho, and he used to come up the forest gate with a bag and have a fag and a pint of beer. That's what he liked, you know, just hanging out. But the second time, we were supporting him at the Anaheim Stadium in front of 250,000 people. And our saxophone player had an altercation with some fellow in a second-hand shop on Melrose Avenue, and we were late. By the time I got there, bang, we're halfway through one step, we got on, and I ran on stage and then skidded off the edge and fell. 80 foot. And then I went, oh my God, these guys are madness, this is fantastic. And I'm pulling that up. I'm trying to make out as part of the act. Well, the second time not going on, but yeah, my producer Clive Langer was doing an album, Absolute Beginners, which a Julian Temple movie, and that's one of the best songs he'd done for a little while, wasn't it? Yeah, at that period. And we were on holiday in France. And Clive said, yeah, I've got a call from Bowie. He says, if you want to come by to his place in Gstaad. So we get there and it's like something out of James Bond, do you know what I mean? And he's standing there silhouetted in the doorway as the drive, like door of electric car parks going up like that. And come on in. And as we go in, we realise that our suitcases are too big to fit in. So they get knocked off onto the floor. And now the underpants are blowing round and he's actually going to pick him up.
Don, I mean, I don't know if you had any problems with David Bowie, but
the last time I saw David, he'd come to see my band, Big Audio Dynamite. We were playing 10 in the Urban Plaza. After the show, backstage, and there's Dave Stewart, Pete Frampton, Jimmy Cliff, and David. Thing is, me and Mick Jones had just nicked an E. And the E was just coming up. And I see David walking towards us, and I'm like, Mick, he's coming, Mick, he's coming. And he comes up and says, I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, ask her. And I literally pushed him away, sent him towards my then girlfriend, Grace. And then me and Mick disappeared into literally a broom cupboard and spent the rest of the evening in the broom cupboard. But a few years later, I'm reading something, was it John Savage? Yeah. David Sykes, Big Audio Dynamite, and others, as an influence for his album Earthly. Yeah. Didn't do so well. But there's a track on there, check it out. What is it? Little Wonder. When it starts. Limbo the law. Not a lot of difference. No, seriously, when I heard it, I was like, what the fuck? And for the little kid from Brixton that's seen him at 14 years old at the Gaumont, and for that to happen, I mean, come on. You know, what a buzz.
It's interesting, isn't it, that idea that he would always be the guy who would nurture talent in that way.
That's it, he championed young talent, very much so, absolutely. And he was very interested in what was going on now.
I think that's the thing, it's about the now, that's what we were talking about. That's why when we're talking about new artists who we can believe in, much as though you pretend you don't believe in them, I believe that because you have Bowie-ness and Ziggy-ness in you, you probably do.
Well, I love the way that he didn't rest on his laurels. I mean, you know, everything's coming together, he's at the top of his game. What's that adage about if it ain't broke? But David fucking smash it up, rip it up, and start all over again. You've got to love that.
That was part of his courage. That was his courage.
And
it was,
it was for himself.
Yeah, and it was not giving a damn about anything, really. I'll make the record that I want to make. And if everyone else likes it,
sometimes it didn't.
If
Sometimes he'd go in a trough, wouldn't he? But then he'd come back out of that trough with something absolutely amazing.
No, I love the way he'd self-destruct his own shit before everyone else did.
Well, tonight is a case in point, isn't it? That's exactly what happened 50 years to the day. Total self-destruction in one night. And it's remarkable when you think about it, because what have you got there? You've got an amazing band. You literally had your breakthrough, and then you're just going, see you later.
Yep.
Thanks for coming.
Start again.
Yeah. I mean,
You've got to have such poise to do that, though, haven't you? You've got to have such context of where you are and be so brave, and I think he did that.
Yeah, I wish I'd done that about 30 years ago.
yeah, but hold on, we were talking about peaks and troughs, and at the moment, you're enjoying a peak.
Thank you very much. That's all I'm saying. Nobody's going to be like him, is it? Just that courage, as you say. I mean, I don't know anyone who's had that sort of courage. I mean, best artist you've ever seen, nobody has as much courage as that. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think we should just talk about the film very quickly. We are running out of time, as I said to you all here. We're obviously going out around the world, so we can't be out around the world past certain people's bedtime. So we'll have to start wrapping it up. But I would say to you, when all of you have seen the film and obviously enjoyed the film at different points, there is a great urban myth that maybe only one man on this stage can actually answer those, because the version of the film we're going to see tonight has those Jeff Beck sequences back in. Now those sequences were taken out, I believe, because Jeff didn't like his shoes. Now Ken, you know I'm going to ask you about this, because you were with Jeff Beck on Beckola and Truth, you know, two phenomenal records, and you knew Jeff, and you were here that night, you set up the microphones. Why did Jeff, what was the problem with Jeff's shoes?
Hey, it was 50 years ago. You expect me to remember that? I've heard very...
The one Richard's wearing, that's it.
I've never heard the shoe thing.
You thought it was the trousers?
I've heard the trousers.
Is it the trousers or is it the shoe?
My belief is if it's that story, it's the trousers. But I've also heard...
Don's got a trouser question.
I heard that Jeff didn't want to be associated with the whole glam thing and the way it was going. That's what I heard. He didn't want to be associated with the glam thing.
What, the trousers?
I don't know, that's what I heard. It could be the trousers and the shoes. I mean, look at them.
But there is one other thing, and it comes down to business. He and his manager did not know it was going to be filmed. Then it became, follow the money.
Right, gotcha. Well, that is, I don't think we can leave it there because that's too much of a low note. So let's bring it back up, stop following the money, and maybe let's just reflect on what has Ziggy actually taught us? Because there are so many lessons to learn from that period, that incarnation, that character.
Well, the birds don't mind you being a bit homogenous, you know.
Right. Well, I might have to go for another answer from someone else. I'm just not sure who. Maybe Richard has got an answer that's slightly different.
I think maybe it taught artists that whole relationship he had with his fans felt so personal from that Top of the Pops performance, isn't it, immediately? And I think people can learn a lot from that as well, just that, like you were saying about fandom earlier, that kind of feeling of being part of that entity, as it were, is a really powerful thing.
I think you're right. Because everybody here and everyone over there out in the world feels that he was talking to them. And I think that is absolutely the thing. That is the thing. Right, well, there you go. I think I'll shut up now. But genuinely, in terms of timing, I think we probably have to wrap it up. We could talk, as you know from seeing these people briefly, for probably the next 4 or 5 hours. But I think we have got a film to watch. So I will say this, I think we are still all living in Ziggy's world, to be honest with you. And I think what we've just done here is just touch upon a few simple nuances, but actually the real joy of Ziggy is kind of in what everybody here and around the world takes with them and continues to take with them. So I'd like to say thank you to you all for being here tonight, and thank you to you all for being here tonight. And thank you to everyone who's joined us. It is very special, I think, to be in a room 50 years to the day that something as seismic as that show happened. And I know for you guys as well, Ken and Mike, I know that is a magnificent moment, and great love to Woody and Jeff McCormack as well, of course. You know, those are people that we should salute and applaud. We'll sign off now. I've just got one quick commercial message to deliver, which is due to popular demand. There are more screenings available actually around the UK on the 6th of July, and there is of course the Blu-ray and accompanying soundtrack out on the 11th of August as well. But you will not see the film in 4K on that Blu-ray. You will, however, on this big screen imminently. So, more information as always at davidbowie.com, and indeed on this big screen in just a second. But for now, I'd like to say thank you so much to you all. Thank you to the panel. Thank you, Hammersmith. You've been amazing.